This is episode 6. It was published in Scribner's Magazine in June of 1905. This is chapter 14. Now, we come back to the action. Gertie Farish, blossoming under Lawrence Selden's attentiveness, has invited him to have dinner with her.
Gertie's little sitting room sparkled with welcome when Selden entered it. It is surprising how little narrow walls and a low ceiling matter when the roof of the soul has suddenly been raised. Gertie sparkled too, or at least shone with a tempered radiance. He had never noticed before that she had points. Really, some good fellow might do worse. Over the little dinner, he told her she ought to marry. He was in a mood to pair off the whole world. She had made the caramel custard with her own hands. It was sinful to keep such gifts to herself. He reflected with a throb of pride that Lily could trim her own hats. She had told him so herself on the day of their walk together. He did not speak of Lily till after dinner. When they were in the sitting room again, and Gertie had brewed the coffee, his eye lighted on a recent photograph of Miss Bart. The photograph was well enough, but to catch her as she had looked last night, Gertie agreed with him. Never had she been so radiant. There had been a new look in her face, something different. Yes, Selden agreed. The coffee was so exquisite that he asked for a second cup. Such a contrast to the watery stuff at the club. But to return to Lily, and again he returned, leading Gertie on, draining her inmost thoughts of their stored tenderness for her friend. At first, she poured herself out unstintingly. His understanding of Lily helped to confirm her own belief in her friend. They dwelt together on the fact that Lily had had no chance. She was made for better things. She might have married more than once, but when the opportunity came, she had always shrunk from it. Percy Gryce had been in love with her, and her dismissal of him was inexplicable. This view of the Gryce incident chimed too well with Selden's mood not to be instantly adopted by him. If rejection there had been, and he wondered now that he had ever doubted it, it was he who had wavered and disowned the face of opportunity, and the joy now warming his breast might have been a familiar inmate if he had captured it in its first flight. It was at this point, perhaps, that a joy just trying its wings in Gertie's heart dropped to earth and lay still. She sat facing Selden, repeating mechanically, "No, she has never been understood." And all the while she herself seemed to be sitting in the center of a great glare of comprehension. He had come to talk to her of Lily, that was all. There had been a third at the feast she had spread for him, and that third had taken her own place. She tried to follow what he was saying, but it was all as meaningless as the boom of waves in a drowning head, and she felt, as the drowning may feel, that to sink would be nothing beside the pain of struggling to keep up. Selden rose, and she drew a deep breath, feeling that soon she could yield to the blessed waves. "Mrs. Fisher's? She was dining there? There's music afterward." He glanced at the clock. "A 10:15? I might look in there. I haven't kept you up too late, Gertie. You look tired. I've rambled on." And in the unwanted overflow of his feelings, he left a cousinly kiss upon her cheek.
At Mrs. Fisher's, Selden learns that Lily has gone to the Trenners, where he follows, hoping to catch her. The house seems deserted, but he sees Lily emerge from the doorway, Trenner behind her. They seem to be alone. Shocked and wounded, Selden leaves. Meanwhile, Gertie ruminates on her unrequited love, her resentment towards Lily growing.
A ring at the doorbell caught Gertie to her feet. For a moment, her heart beat incoherently. Then she remembered that such calls were not unknown in her charitable work. She flung on her dressing gown and, unlocking the door, confronted the shining vision of Lily Bart. Gertie's first movement was one of revulsion. She shrank back as though Lily's presence flashed a light upon her misery. Then she heard her name in a cry, had a glimpse of her friend's face, and felt herself clung to. "Lily, what is it?" she exclaimed. Miss Bart released her and stood breathing brokenly, like one who has gained shelter after a long flight. "I was so cold. I couldn't go home. Have you a fire?" Gertie's compassionate instincts swept aside her reluctances. Lily was simply someone who needed help. "There is kindling wood here. The fire will burn in a minute." She knelt, and the flame leapt under her rapid hands. It flashed strangely through the tears which still blurred her eyes, and smote the white ruin of Lily's face. The girls looked at each other in silence. Then Lily repeated, "I couldn't go home." "No, no, you came here, dear. You're cold and tired. Sit quiet, and I'll make you some tea." Lily sat quiet, leaning toward the fire. The clatter of cups soothed her. But when Gertie stood at her side with the tea, she pushed it away. "I came here because I couldn't bear to be alone," she said. Gertie set down the cup and knelt beside her. "Lily, something has happened. Can't you tell me? You have been frightened. What has frightened you? Tell me if you can, a word or two, so that I can help you." Lily shook her head. "I am not frightened. That's not the word. Can you imagine looking into your glass some morning and seeing a disfigurement, some hideous change that has come to you while you slept? Well, I seem to myself like that. I can't bear to see myself in my own thoughts. I hate ugliness, you know. I've always turned from it, but I can't explain to you. You wouldn't understand." She lifted her head and her eyes fell on the clock. "How long the night is, and I know I shan't sleep. Someone told me my father used to lie sleepless and think of sorrows. And he was not wicked, only unfortunate. I see now how he must have suffered lying alone with his thoughts. But I am bad. All my thoughts are bad. I have always had bad people about me. Is that any excuse? I thought I could manage my own life. I was proud, but now I'm on their level." Sobs shook her. Gertie knelt beside her, waiting till this gust of misery should loosen free speech. She had first imagined some physical shock, but she now saw that other nerve centers were smitten, and her mind trembled back from conjecture.